Hello there. It's a little after midnight, as you can see, and I ought to be going to bed, but I thought instead I might share with you a few fun facts that I've gathered about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States of America. You might wonder whether there were better things for me to be doing at midnight in the morning, and maybe you're right, but here I am. Now, my first fact is that FDR... Hang on. Now, my first fact is that Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, were cousins. Now, to be fair, I'm not talking about ordinary cousins, I'm talking about fifth cousins once removed, which isn't really very related. I mean, half the people in your hometown are probably your fifth cousins once removed. What that actually means is that Eleanor's great-great-great-great-grandfather was the brother of Franklin's great-great-great-grandfather, so they weren't really very related, but they were related enough to have always had the same surname even before their marriage, so it did feel a little incestuous, if only in name and not in practice. Now, Eleanor also happened to be the niece of former President Theodore Roosevelt. Sorry, I've got my cup of tea. Eleanor also happened to be the niece of former President Theodore Roosevelt. Now, all three were descended from the same common ancestor, and his name was Nicholas van Roosevelt. He was a Dutch-American who was born and raised in New Amsterdam, which later became New York, of course, and he was the first member of the family to adopt the more modern spelling, or what we now consider to be the more modern spelling, Roosevelt, rather than Van Rosenvelt. So he added an O, took out the N, and cut off the Van to make it, I suppose, what he saw as a more American spelling, or perhaps it was simply closer to how he pronounced it. I couldn't say. That's speculation at this point. But when I was having a little look at his Wikipedia page earlier on to make sure that I was getting the facts right for this video, it did mention that he was a slave owner, and I don't believe he was the only one to have been. He was born in the late 1600s, I believe, and lived around that time. Not a very bright start to what actually ended up rather a promising family line. Now, my second fun fact is more of an anecdote, so I'm breaking with the structure I've set myself already on point 2. Now this comes from December of 1941, just after the United States' entrance into the Second World War. The British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, who was by any account and all accounts quite a character, regardless of your political opinion of him or your opinion of how he fared as Prime Minister. He was a character. He was a man who you could tell quite a few stories about, I'm sure. In fact, if I might go off on a bit of a tangent, I recall as a child hearing that he used to drink rather a lot. I mean, rather a lot over the course of a day. I think he started at like 11 o'clock with champagne in bed or something, but I think that comes from a Horrible Histories sketch, so you might not want to quote me on that, and it's my own memory of a Horrible Histories sketch, so who can tell how accurate I'm being. But in short, he was a character, and when he went to stay in the White House just after America joined the war, I suppose President Roosevelt wanted to consult the British Prime Minister and discuss strategy and how they would proceed in war-making at such a dangerous time, and Churchill was staying in one of the guest suites in the White House. He was a man that smoked, and he also had some odd habits, and one of these was that he would have his bath, and then he would sit naked, smoking a cigar. And unbeknownst to him, President Roosevelt, in his wheelchair, was making his way down the corridor, silently, I suppose, towards the guest suite, and he came into Churchill's rooms unannounced, without a moment's warning, and he saw the British Prime Minister there, absolutely naked, smoking a cigar, and he made to turn his wheelchair around and sort of to apologise and to make his embarrassed exit. And Churchill said to him, as he made his sort of hurried apologies, you imagine, Churchill said, "The Prime Minister of Great Britain has nothing to hide from the President of the United States." And I have to say, whilst I had to look up the precise wording myself, that is an anecdote that has always stuck in my mind ever since I first heard it. I can't think when I did, it was a number of years ago, but the image of, a sort of late 50s FDR in his wheelchair, desperately trying to escape the rather, one can only imagine, slightly unpleasant figure of a naked smoking Churchill, is rather an amusing one in my mind. Now, if I might deign to offer you another anecdote, when I was at school, or more particularly when I was in sixth form, I was told by my teacher, who was both a history teacher and an American citizen, that Franklin Delano Roosevelt died in bed beside his mistress. Now, I believe she told me this in absolute good faith, but I have looked into the matter in recent years and I've found no evidence of that. I mean, frankly, it's not true. It's not true at all. He was, I believe, posing for a portrait, and he said, "I've got this terrible headache," and slumped forwards and sort of passed out and was carried to his bed, and there he died. He wasn't in bed with his mistress, unless I'm drastically wrong, and really you shouldn't trust anything I say as fact. I'm just doing this for a bit of light-hearted fun. Now, it is true, however, that he did have mistresses. I mean, I think there are reports of about 3 affairs, and I'm sure there might have been more. He was a man that didn't have a wonderful married relationship with his wife, with Eleanor Roosevelt, because he had an affair to begin with, I think in 1914, I think it lasted till 1918, and when it was discovered, it really broke the marriage apart between him and Eleanor. I'm aware I called this video Fun Facts, so I won't linger on the marriage and the breakup too much. They stayed together mainly for political reasons, and I suppose Eleanor supported her husband's policies and his positions, but I think a lot of the love left her when she discovered that. And he is supposed to have had, yes, a couple of affairs in his lifetime. Most notably, I would say, with the Crown Princess of Norway, Crown Princess Martha. Well, it's Martha with an umlaut over the A, and I'm afraid I don't know how Norwegian spelling works. I did try to find a Norwegian pronunciation of the name before I made this video, and I couldn't find one. It might be Marta, Merta, if it's more like a German air sound, but yes, he was said to have a relationship, or it was speculated that he did, with Crown Prince Martha while she stayed at the White House during the war. The Norwegian royal family, I believe, did it partially evacuate overseas, or did it totally evacuate overseas during the war? Whatever, she was at the White House for a bit, and he was said to have a bit of a relationship with her. In fact, his son gave a comment as to this effect. Yes, his son said there is a real possibility a romantic relationship existed. Now that's James Roosevelt, he said that. And at the time, White House aides actually referred to her as the president's girlfriend. So it seems that he got around, you might say, for a man who was very busy with his job, and no spring chicken, certainly not towards the end of his presidency. And anyway, this Crown Princess Martha was incredibly well connected. I mean, obviously being a member of the Norwegian royal family, but her sister was the Queen of Belgium, and 2 of her nephews ended up being kings of Belgium. So this wasn't some minor royal that FDR was said to have flirted with or had a relationship with even. It was someone pretty important, and she never actually ended up becoming the Queen of Norway because she died before her own husband came to the throne. Maybe there she had a shot at being First Lady. Now, this last fact I would call definitely more of a fun fact. It doesn't sound that way, so you're going to have to trust me, but in February of 1933, 1 month before Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the President of the United States, he was in Florida, I believe, at a campaign event, and an assassin tried to kill him. However, the assassin did not count on a woman present, who a biography of FDR's describes as an alert spectator being present, and she hit the assassin with her handbag and knocked his aim off course, and the bullet went astray and spoiled his aim, tragically killing the mayor of Chicago in the process. And his name was Anton Samak. I just had to check that and make sure I got it right. I believe that surname is Czech, so I apologise if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. But yes, if it hadn't been for Mrs. Lillian Cross, which was a name I found in a New Yorker article, I believe, quoting a previous article from the 30s at the time, then FDR could well have been shot, he could well have been assassinated. And if he was assassinated, sorry, I say this with a smile on my face because I'm getting to something a bit farcical. If he was assassinated, perhaps it would have played out like it did in the book and television series. No, not television series, it was an Amazon Prime series, The Man in the High Castle, which was a book written by Philip K. Dick, and details exactly that. It details the world of a German victory and a Japanese victory in World War II, which FDR wasn't president, America never recovered from the Depression, and so it lost the war. Now, I was about to say that the book was grounded in that world, whereas the Amazon Prime series is not necessarily grounded in that world, it takes rather a different track. but I'm not really sure you can say the book is grounded in any world. I mean, if you've read the book, you know that it takes some liberties. It goes in a direction that history might not have led in. But I mean, certainly it's a thought-provoking read if you are curious as to that assassination attempt. But anyway, those were my few fun facts about the man himself, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I hope you found them interesting. I mean, he was rather a fascinating character. I mean, I didn't just procure a picture of him for this video. I do have one on my wall because I admire the man and I think he was of strong character and strong resolve, and I think he did great things for America, but his personal life, there were things to be desired, particularly if your name was Delano Roosevelt. I mean, he probably could have started to, amend things in his personal life by not marrying a distant cousin. No, I'm being mean. I mean, more people than you think must be married to a distant relative, particularly if you live in a small country, or particularly if you live in your hometown and your family have lived in that hometown. I mean, there's a decent chance there might be third cousins or fourth cousins or fifth cousins who've ended up getting into relationships. It doesn't bear thinking about, but the good news is you share very, very little actual DNA or anything that might cause problems. I don't know why I'm talking about this so heavily. I just find it odd that he was married to his cousin. I mean, the more interesting fact is that he was married to the niece of the only other President Roosevelt. Surely that's the more interesting fact here. Yes, I think so. And of course, I mean, maybe the sin of marrying your distant cousin is balanced out by having to look at a naked Winston Churchill. I mean, I think that would be a scar on anyone's retinas and mind and character. Maybe that was a sort of cosmic karma intervening. And I mean, speaking of the man in the high castle and stories that take liberties, I mean, you could probably write a more realistic alternate history in which FDR somehow ended up as Norwegian royalty. I mean, I don't know how quite it would work, but I don't know how quite it would work. But if he was, a favourite of the crown princess, though she herself was of course only in the royal family through marriage, I believe. As I say, you shouldn't trust me on any authority on any of these matters. I'm just having a little bit of fun very late at night. Oh, it's nearly 1 o'clock now. I mean, I really should end this video. But I hope you have enjoyed what were intended to be a few fun facts about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. If you would like me to have a look at a few fun facts about other subjects, I do have some other subjects in mind. I thought there might be a couple of subjects that were quite fun to look into, and I thought late at night I could have a bit more of a ramble, though perhaps I should do it in the daytime when I can speak a bit louder. I mean, it's nearly 1 o'clock and I haven't set that forwards. I could pan round and show you outside. It's dark out there. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I mean, a like or a subscribe is very much appreciated. You do not have to. I don't want to be one of those sorts of people who demands that at the end of their videos, so just do as you will. Shut the tab and never think of me again for all I care. No, that sounds a bit vindictive. Anyway, do as you will. Do as you will. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again in a similar sort of video. Perhaps I shall never make another video like this, but I'll see you again at some point, I'm sure. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.